This shiur is an introduction to the sugya of Eved Ivri. Eved Ivri runs from Daf Yud Daled Amud Beis until Daf Chav Beis Amud Beis in Kedushin. It is advised to learn that Gemara and the Rashi, with the Rashis and the Taisasin first, before you attempt to use these little clips that I'm going to leave you. Otherwise, you're just going to be chasing the ideas that will be introduced here if you're not familiar with them. The Gemara, the Mishnah starts on Yud Daled Beis. The Mishnah starts Eved Ivri is nikna bekesef. We have a pasuk for kiyim korishus bita as kisikna Eved Ivri, and we need a pasuk. The Gemara says we need a pasuk for an akum that buys an Eved Ivri. We need a pasuk for a Yisrael that buys an Eved Ivri, and there's two forms of that. One is where Bezdin sells him for his geneva, and then there's another case where, and we need a separate pasuk to tell me that kesef is kind of an Eved Ivri that sells himself into not slavery, it's indentured service. It's only till sheish or till yovel. We need all the, and we need a separate pasuk for Amma that kesef works to be kind of an Amma. Another Pnei question is, it's right on the spot on your Daled base. It's divrei maskul Eved Ivri nikne bekesef. He asks, what do I need all these different psukim? Once I have one pasuk, let it be a gilui that kesef works for avodim ivrim. What's the difference between machro bezdin, macharatzmai? What's the difference if an Ivriya and Eved Ivri? They both have the same. I mean, Ivriya is an Eved Ivri. She happens to have slightly more dinim for her benefit, but she has the same status as an Eved Ivri. She has to work for the adon that pays for her. In order to answer this question, then the Pnei has another question. Why doesn't Chalipin work? And the Rambam openly says Chalipin does not work for an Eved Ivri. And now in Kedushin, making Kedushin in the beginning of the parak for an Eishes Ish, Mor says that the reason why Chalipin doesn't work is because Chalipin we don't need a pachas. It works pachas m'shavah pruta. We don't need a shavah pruta. So therefore, Isha pachas m'shavah pruta le'mikni nafsha. She won't allow herself. So even then it's more, it doesn't work. So whatever the reason is over there, we have a reason. Here in the sugya, if you launch a sugya from Yud Daled Beis to Chav Beis on Beis, you will not see any mention of why Chalipin doesn't work. I'd like to give over. There's a Yisod. It's a case. It's a different kind of case of mumminess by Eved Ivri. By anything else out there, any objects, natural objects there, they karka, or items like household items, or your car, or anything that is bought and sold, it naturally, on its own, by itself, contains mummin. It represents capital. It has what's called an attribute of mummin. So all I have to do is purchase it. I don't have to create the mummin. But by Eved Ivri, there is no mummin, and he's a ben chayron when he starts. We're not talking about buying and selling an Eved Ivri. I don't know if you can do that. Let's say even if you could do that, you would have to be able to generate at the same time that you want to purchase the capital. You have to generate the attribute of capital within him. So in other words, what you first have to do is to create an Eved Ivri out of a ben chayron. You have to create an Eved Ivri, and then you can be kinda the Eved Ivri. The Eved Ivri is not a ben chayron. He represents capital. So therefore, I would say, if the case is machro bezdin, kesef works, so it does both generates the idea of makes him into an Eved Ivri, and then you're kind of the Eved Ivri. So then, how do I know that works by Moichar Atzmai? Maybe Kesef doesn't work for that. Maybe Moichar Atzmai, Kesef can't generate him and produce an Eved Ivri. So you have to use star. So you need an extra pasuk. And if I know by Eved Ivri, I don't know by Ivry. And how do I know that Kesef both generates the idea of the concept and turns her into an Amavriya, and then it's kind of the Amavriya? So I have to have psukim for a separate pasuk for each one. That takes care of the first question of the Pnei Yeshua. Now the question is, Chalipin, why doesn't Chalipin help? Well, it could very well be that because we don't have a makor that Chalipin can generate an Eved Ivri. All we know is Chalipin buys and is kind of objects that naturally have an Inyan Mammon and represents capital. So you're kind of the capital. So if you're, it doesn't make a difference if you're going to be kind of a boat or you're going to be kind of a needle. It's Chalipin, and you're kind of with Chalipin because it represents the object that you're buying. Naturally has, it represents capital, and you're buying that Mammonist part, and therefore we know that it works. However, Chalipin, we don't have any chiddush from the Torah that Chalipin generates the Inyan of Mammon. Now, to give you an idea of what this Inyan Mammon is, let me show you what the Gemara by a Gemara in Bava Kama Daf Samach Ches Samad Beis. The Gemara says that if a person steals an animal and he wants to be makdash it, he cannot. Why? It's ein shaloi. And the Gemara also says that the owner who had it stolen from him also cannot, because since the Ganef has it, then it's not in the rishus of the owner. And the Gemara learns out it's a pasuk. Ma ish yaktish is beisai, ma beisai shaloi, afkal shaloi. So the Ganef cannot be makdish the animal because the animal is not his. What do I need a pasuk? Now the question is, what do I need a pasuk? Can I sell something that's not mine? Do I have to have a pasuk that I can't sell something, or I can't give away something that's not mine? What do I need a pasuk for? It's not mine. I can't give it away. So same thing over here. If I want to be makdish it l'mizbeach, I want to make it into a korban. Forget about mitzvah bo ba'aver. Let's say it wouldn't be a problem, right? But I can't. I just have no control over it. It's not mine. It's the owner's. So why should I be able to? What do I need a pasuk to tell me that? The answer is because every object actually contains two parts: the object itself and and attributes that is contained within it. And one of them is the attribute of capital. It's a tchun. It's a characteristic. It's something that's that not the object itself. It's something that's within the object. So therefore, and that's that. And the moment is the only thing I can be kind of. I can't be kind of the actual object. So I don't have to have a pasuk to tell me that I can't sell what I don't own, because I only own mammon. If I don't own the mammon, I have no power over it to give it away. Masha'en kain hektish. Hektish is actually a chalais on the actual object, not the capital that it represents. So therefore, what's the difference between me and the owner? His relationship to the actual object is the same as me, because we're not. He might control the momminess within the object, but he doesn't control the object. The object is just plain out there. It's just an object. So if the Torah says the object of a behemoth is your makdashit, so it doesn't mean without a pasuk I would not say that you need to be the Bible. It's k'mashmal on you too. That's exactly because in other words, you're not actually. It doesn't come from your bias. The power to be makdash does not come from your bias. Everyone has the same power to be makdash anything. Just the Torah limits making hektish on something that's not yours. So now let's go back in the same vein. We therefore can say by an Eved Ivri he's a ben chayrin. He has no Inyan mammon within him. So therefore you can't be makdish him. So therefore you can't buy him. You can't buy ben chayrin. You can't buy him. What do you mean he's an Eved Ivri? All you can do is say, okay, you want to work for me, you work for me. But then he's a payol, and a payol can always just back out whenever he wants to. The Poil there's no recourse. Well, actually, there is a little recourse, but if he leaves you with half a job, which ruins the half that he did, then maybe you could do something. But if he just he worked for a week and he doesn't show up the second week, that's it. He's pottered. You can't do anything to him. He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to work. They don't have to work. But an Eved Ivri, you're buying. You're being kind of the Eved Ivri, and he becomes mechuyev. So therefore, first you have to create the Inyan Mammon by making him into an Eved Ivri, and then you could be kind of the Eved Ivri. So we need a new pasuk for each case is different. How do we know that Kesef generates the Inyan Mammon in a case of Amavriya, in a case of Eved Ivri, in a case of Mechar Atzma, in a case of Machru Bezin? In order to give you a little bit more depth, let's talk about a Gemara in Kedushin, Daf Tezayin Amud Aleph. The Gemara says that there's a bright. In our mission, it doesn't say that you can buy an Eved Ivri with a shtar, but a brisa says you can free an Eved Ivri with a shtar. But a brisa brings down that you can free an Eved Ivri with a shtar, and then the Gemara over there asks, who needs a shtar? The Eved Ivri owes you work, and you have a kinyan in him, fine, but he's not anything more than that meshubit. It's a shibud that he just can't walk away like a poil. Poil has no shibud. Whatever he does, he should get paid for. Whatever he doesn't do, he doesn't get paid for. He walks away. An Eved can't walk away because you created an Eved Ivri out of this guy, so then he's meshubit to work. So a person can always be Michael. Can't a person be Michael a debt? So the Eved Ivri, all he has is a shibud. It's like a debt. So then, if you're Michael, what do you need a shtar for? So the Gemara says, Rava says from here, Zoyisameris. It's not the Hebrew Zotomeret. It's the Gemara Zotomeret, which means this proves a concept that when you're purchasing Eved Ivri, it's not merely a case of a person who, it's like a debt. The person owes you his sheirut, his service. When it's more than that. He actually have a kinyan. Eved Ivri gufay kani, says Rava, and then Rava goes and says if a person owns a building, he can't be meichel it away. He can't say I'm meichel you. I mean, he can be mafgrit, but and hefker is much more than just mechila. You can't just forgive. You can't let go of something that you own. If you own it, you can't let go unless you use a kinyan. Just like you use a kinyan to buy it, you have to use a kinyan to undo that buying, to give it away, or to even hefker. Hefker you can't. You have to. There's all rules of how hefker work. It's not just a matter of forget about it. If you own something, if you can't just forget about it, so therefore you have to have a shtar to free an Eved Ivri. Now a dibber of a mechila doesn't help. Now we have to understand what kinyan aguf is. So we're getting to, at this point, we're going to go into what the idea of an Eved Ivri is. The Ramban in Gittin says he's referring to an Eved Knani. He writes, it's on Lamed Ches Amud Beis, that there's two kinyanim in an Eved Knani. So I'm going to later say that there's two kinyanim in an Eved Ivri. One is called kinyan mammon. That's his kinyan that he has of Maisi Yadayim, that he has all the service that's possible to come out of this man belongs to the Adon, the master. It's not even his own. He can't decide to open up his own little business on the side. Everything that comes out of him, every piece of work that comes out of him, is owned by the Adam. So that's it because of his kinyan of Ma'aseh Yadayim. And then he said, the Ramban says he has a second kinyan, and he calls that the second kinyan is a kinyan aguf, and he says and at the same time it's a kinyan iser. And he says that it's similar to kedushin and in an isha, that you're kind of her and she's your Ashes Ish, and even though you're not actually together, the actual Nisuin comes later. In our days, of course, we do it the same night. We have the whole chuppah and the kedushin. Actually, it's the other way around. First you do kedushin, and then you do chuppah. But it certainly can be separated. That you can have kedushin and then you can have Nisuin, and there could be an interim in between. Now, if you don't have Nisuin, you're not living together, but she's yours. You're kind of her for her. Actually, you're kinding her wedness in her. You're not kind of her. She's the Ran in the beginning of Gittin says that she's not your piece of mammon. But the Ramban is medama, the kinyan that you make in an Eved Kanani too, the kinyan that you make in an Isha by Kedushin. And he says just like you can't be rid of the Isha that you made a Kedushin in by Mechila, by just Dibra alone, by just letting it go. You can't be Mechlit. So therefore neither can you, Dibra alone, can you get rid of your Eved Kanani. We're all talking about an Eved Kanani. It's not Paka without a Shtar Shichar. Now, even though the Mammon, you could get rid of the Mammon without using any kind of kinyan, you could just be mafker the Mammon. In other words, if you could be mafker, you're Eved. But the Ramban says, or what happens if your Eved got stolen or ran away, and you're Miyayish, if ever finding him again, that you lose the kinyan that you have in his Mammonis. Just like by Yish, it's like by Yishana, something that was stolen from you. But at the kinyan Isser still remains. He's still an Eved Kanani, and of course, as long as you're an Eved Kanani, you can't marry a Bas Yisrael. You have mitzvahs like an Isha. I mean, it doesn't change just because you're mafker him. It's just that now he can open up his little business on this and not worry about having the profits go to the Ud. And also, the reason why the Ramban was talking about it, he had the Gemara says that you can't be makdish your Eved, so that the Ramban is explaining, because if you're makdish your Eved, that means that the Hektish would get a kinyan Isser in an Eved. There's no such thing. Hektish cannot create or cannot have a kinyan Isser, so therefore nothing happens. If you're makdish your Eved, it's tantamount to freeing him. Okay. So what we see from the Ramban is that this kinyan Isser is called a kinyan aguf, and you can't just send them away, or even Hefker alone. Although there is one Maliyamar that holds that Hefker works, but we all disagree, and the Rav Poskim Tanoim and Rav Amoraim disagree, and so you need to use a shtar because there was a kinyan aguf, and he calls that kinyan Isser. That's left to explain when we deal with it. Now, actually, we could say the same thing over here. And Ivry also has a kinyan Isser, because we know that Ivry is mutter to live with a shifcha knanis. Now, his status, there's some change in his guf, and there's some change in his status. He's no longer just a plain old Ben Cheren. Ben Cheren is not allowed to live with a shifcha, and not allowed to marry a shifcha, not allowed to stay with a shifcha. But an Ivry is, right? And in fact, even though there's Gemaras that say that it's a question whether if you sell yourself as an Ivry, whether you can the Adon can force you to take a shifcha kananis. If the bezin sells you, then yeah, the Yadin can always force you to take a shifcha kananis. But if you sell yourself, it's machlekes whether the Yadin can force you to take a shifcha kananis. But for example, the Ritva says that you're mut if you want to take, or you could, because you're an Eved Ivri. Just they can't force you if you're Meicher Atzmai. So obviously there was this change in the stance. So let's call that a kinyan guf, and that's why you can't be Meichel. The question that does arise is, why don't we say that? So the only reason why you can't be Michael is because the Yisr part. That's why you can't be Michael on an Eved Kanani. That's why. So and that's what the Kinyan Guf part is called. So the question is, but an Eved Ivri, why not let's be Michael? So that gets rid of the moment part, and the Yisr part. Okay, so I mean the Yisr part is he could be with a Shifcha Kanani, so what? But is he mutter to a Bas Yisrael? He's always mutter to Bas Yisrael. Doesn't becoming an Eved Ivri doesn't change the fact that you can marry a Bas Yisrael. So therefore, let's just be Michael. Why does Gemara say that Rav Samaris that Eved Ivri Gufakani and Gufakani according to Ramban means that you have this Inyan Isser. You're a different Guf. You have a different status. You have a different. You're a different Gavra, and so that but that would be not good by an Eved Kanani. But by an Eved Ivri, what stops back to the same question again? Let's be Michael on the moment. The Yisr part is not a problem for an Eved Ivri. He can marry a Bas Yisrael, so he runs around and he's free. Why does he fear? So now there are other Rishonim. There's the Miri on the spot says that the reason why you can't be Michael an Eved Ivri Gufi Kani means that you have a Kenyan decal of payers. Now, there are definitely there's a change in the Gavra, but that's not the reason why the Gemara says that Gufay Kani. The reason why it's Gufay Kani is because you actually have a Kenyan. Like, of course, he's not like an Eved Kanani. Eved Kanani turns into a Chefza of Mammon, totally and he's like an object of Mammon. But an Eved Ivri is not. But what happens in an Eved Ivri is you get a kinyan of decal pairs. For example, if you can buy a person's produce, but there's one problem with that is if it's not the season and it hasn't produced that produce yet, it's a davar shaloi boli olam. It's a future entity, and we paskin that we hold that you cannot buy or sell a future entity. So therefore, what you do is you buy the tree in respect to its pairs. You buy the stalk in respect to its to its kernel of wheat when it grows, even though it's not present yet. Why? Because your kinyan is in it's not in something that's a future entity. Kinyan is in what's here right now, but it's not a kinyan. It's a total kinyan in the object, in the moments of the object as it is right now. It's in the object in respect to what the object will produce. Same thing over here. The Eved Ivri, if you create an Eved Ivri, you're not creating an Eved Kanani. It's not. He doesn't become a full blown Chefz of Mammon, but he is enough of you. It's enough something it's chal there that your kaina, the Eved Ivri, with respect to all the service that he will produce. So therefore, it's just like decal of Paris, you can't be Michael decal of Paris. A kinyan decal of Paris is just the same as kinyan as a kinyan of Paris, if it would work. I mean, if you made a full total kinyan, if you bought somebody's orchard, it's all yours. And now, so if you buy the orchard in respect to the Paris that it produces, so there's a kinyan in the goof of the of the objects of the trees. Therefore, but it's only in respect to the produce, right? But but you can't be meichel it. We'll get back to what but the Ramban doesn't hold like that. The Ramban holds that there's a kinyan isser that happens here. It's similar to an Eved Kanani, and that's what's stopping you from just being meichel him and telling him to go home, and that's what requires a shtar shecher to release him. This has been part 1.